This is part 2 of my story. If you haven't watched part 1, I'd go back and watch that because it just explains all of the history up to the point where I had been on the GAPS diet with my older son, him for his random food allergies that he had just come across, and me for my thyroid issues. Then I got pregnant with my younger son, and that's where we're starting in this story. I'd love to say it was a love story from then on, that I never touched another grain and that things were happily ever after. But I got pregnant with Oliver, my younger son. And when you are pregnant, if you've been pregnant before, you realize you don't feel well a lot of times. And therefore I could not really eat meat or vegetables or a lot of things that I should have. And it was pretty much like a white bread, Chick-fil-A, and root beer kind of pregnancy. Those were about the only things I could stomach. Somehow I was able to still get in my fermented cod liver oil every day, but yet everything else was kind of not at all in line with this grain-free diet, and it was just a gluten all the way. I basically just survived through the pregnancy, and I kept Nathan on the GAPS diet the entire time, and he was doing fantastic. Like the cinnamon and walnut thing, completely gone. Like he could eat both of them with no issue. He was still having a little bit of an issue with dairy, which he had had before that, where he would get diarrhea, but by the end of this, he was fine. He could eat dairy with no issue whatsoever. So pretty much everything rectified with him, and he was a totally different kid, and I was still really strict with him, making sure he wouldn't touch anything processed or with grains or anything like that. But then after I had Oliver, we weren't sure what I was gonna do. And around this time, I was kind of sick of GAPS just because there is a small community and there are some cookbook kind of things out there, but it wasn't, I don't know, my whole entire life I've been a fan of Martha Stewart and baking and cooking, and I've always been a foodie, and there just wasn't a lot of options for me, and so the boredom just wasn't helping. So luckily around this time, paleo really started to come into its own, and there were some paleo bloggers that were creating things like baking items and things that just kind of piqued my interest and made me a little bit more excited and motivated. So I started to transition to paleo. Paleo and GAPS are very similar. There are some differences, like with sweet potatoes and just certain kind of things like that, but they're very similar. So I just kind of transitioned Nathan onto paleo. I started eating paleo, and when my son Oliver started to get to the point where he was eating food, he ate paleo as well. During this time, my husband really started to see how much better we were all feeling, so he kind of just changed over to paleo too, partially just because it was easier for everybody to all be on it at the same time. And we were all doing great. The only problem is that if you've heard a lot of times with paleo, people do it 80-20, where they'll do 80% paleo and 20% not. And that's kind of where we were, because I would do 80% paleo and then 20% when we went out to a restaurant, we would eat pizza, or I remember we went to New York City and I ate all the things there. And it's because we're in New York City. I mean, you're gonna have a bagel and you're gonna have pizza and you're gonna have the pastries and all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't feel my best. And while I was definitely feeling better than I had been prior to doing paleo, I didn't still feel fantastic, but I don't think I even realized that at the time. I think, to me, I was feeling so much better. But after a particularly stressful time in the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, I really noticed that my energy was just not there. I was just so tired all the time. My kids would ask me every day after we'd get home from work and their daycare, "Come play with us, mommy." And I'm like, "I'm too tired, I can't do it." And I found a lot of times I would come home and lay on the couch, and my husband would have to make dinner, and it was just I was sleeping 12 hours a night, taking naps, all of these different things, and it was just getting worse and worse. I was having a hard time at work concentrating, and a lot of the thyroid issues that I had been kind of dealing with my whole entire life were getting worse, and it was just terrible. I just remember sitting outside on my patio one day, and Nathan asked me, "Hey, mommy, come play with us." And I said, "Oh, buddy, I can't. I'm just too tired." And the look on his face, it just broke my heart. Because I had been doing this almost every day for the last couple months. Every single day when my kids asked me to play, "Mommy, come play." And I said, "No, I am too tired." And it just broke my heart. I couldn't keep doing that. So I decided that day to do something about it. and I found a functional medicine practitioner here in Colorado and started doing the autoimmune paleo diet. And when I went to go meet with him, he was totally on board with me doing the autoimmune paleo diet. And he did a whole bunch of tests, discovered that I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, not necessarily just hypothyroid, and that I had celiac disease. And the reason why I was feeling as tired as I was I had adrenal fatigue, which is very closely tied in with Hashimoto's, but it was also because the gluten that I had been eating every so often in this 80-20 thing, and all of the other grains and everything, plus a lot of the sugars that I had been eating, all of this stuff was kind of just a perfect storm to make my Hashimoto's flare up in a spectacular fashion that was causing my adrenal fatigue as well. And it was just a mess. So through doing the autoimmune paleo diet and then a whole bunch of supplements from my functional medicine practitioner to help rebalance a lot of the vitamins and minerals that I had not been absorbing at all because of my celiac disease. So like I had a huge iron imbalance, zinc, magnesium, all of these things were all missing from my body. So even trying to get them through diet was not going to be enough. I mean, I was so deficient in these things. So the supplements really helped me feel better. And then I also had SIBO as well, which was, like all of these different things, but that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so he worked with me with antimicrobials and stuff to just try to heal that as well. And eventually after a couple of months, I started feeling so much better than I felt in 10, 15 years. It was just incredible. I didn't even realize that one could feel that good. Look back at that time period in my life, and I mean, my functional medicine practitioner was not covered by insurance. He was $14,000 for the year, but I would go back and do that and pay 4 times the amount of that just because it was such an amazing time in my life where I learned how good feels, how fantastic feels. And to have that knowledge is just great because then you know what you can achieve. So after that, I started my blog so I can share recipes and tips and stuff to help you guys start to feel better. And I went on and ate a paleo diet for the next few years. And I was doing great until the end of 2017 or so, where my puppy, who wasn't even a year old, but completely entrenched in our hearts at this point, got really sick. He broke his paw, and then he found out we had an infection, and he has an autoimmune disease and all this stuff. And so we went through all of this stuff. Because he's a member of our family, I spent my time really trying to help him. I mean, I was giving him medications every hour or so and really worried about him and going through an emotional roller coaster of thinking he was gonna die several times, just all of this stuff. And so I kind of just stopped the diet. I just kind of relied on convenience, and I was like, oh, I'll just buy this gluten-free this and gluten-free that and eat corn, and I'm gonna eat dairy, and when we go on vacation, I'm gonna eat anything I want that was gluten-free. And I adopted this mindset where I just didn't care anymore. And then I got hit with the worst Hashimoto's flare I've had since 2014. And a lot of the stuff started coming crashing back, where I was exhausted again, heart palpitations, dry skin, hair falling out, all of the different things that I had been going through back in 2014. And that was a wake-up call, knowing that okay, yeah, I gotta take care of my dog, but I also gotta take care of myself. And so I shared my whole entire journey here, where I tried the Whole30 first to really kind of quell it, because I've had minor flares throughout, just where maybe I've been eating a little too much sugar, too many paleo muffins or waffles or something. And so a Whole30 really just kind of quells that, because a lot of my issues tend to center around blood sugar issues. But this time, this was a much bigger issue. And so I had to go on autoimmune paleo to really kind of quell the whole entire disease activity and get my Hashimoto's flare under control. And I shared that again in the vlog as well, so you can see all of that if you want to see it. But luckily, through the Whole30 and then the AIP, I've gotten back to where I was in the end of 2014, feeling fantastic again. And so now I'm pretty much almost all the way to regular, just plain paleo. And it's where I feel my best, I think. I think I can go and have some grains every so often, gluten-free grains, and some beans every so often, and kind of go outside the confines of the paleo diet. I think dairy really is gonna be one of those things I gotta just not do, because I really think that affects me. However, I think for the most part, I'm gonna be 99% paleo right now, just because I think that's where I feel my best. And really it makes so much more sense for me to stay where I feel my best. I know it's so hard sometimes. It gets so busy or complicated and things just fall by the wayside, but I think that's where I'm gonna try to stay. And that's pretty much it. I tell you this story just to let you know that most of us kind of start in the same place with an unhealthy kind of standard normal diet. And then we may find health, and then we may fall off the wagon again, and then we may find health, and then we may fall off the wagon again, and then we may find health, and so on and so forth. And it's a continuing journey. It's not something that once you find it, all the angels sing and everything's gonna be, you know, happily ever after kind of like story. It's gonna be a struggle every so often. And the important thing is to remember where, or know what fantastic feels like, so that way when you get away from it, you can get back to it. And sometimes it requires little steps. So you might just want to try gluten-free for now. And sometimes it requires big steps. So you might want to try Autoimmune Paleo. But it's whatever works for you and whatever you can do and whatever you will do. That's the most important part. I mean, you can have pie in the sky aspirations for everything, but as long as you will do it, that's what you need to do. I'm sure I will slip up again, and I know next time I go on vacation, I will probably eat just regular gluten-free and not paleo, and hopefully I'll get back to it when I come home from vacation. I mean, it's just life. That's life. All right, well, I hope this helps you to understand my story and to know that I'm definitely not perfect by any means whatsoever, but that I'm very, very fortunate that I have found paleo as a way for me to feel my best, and I am grateful every day that I have found that, because I think without it, I would definitely be sick, and probably my kids wouldn't even know who I am, honestly. They'd probably be stuck with a mom who could barely do anything with them, and it just breaks my heart to think about that. So I'm just so grateful that I have this tool in my toolbox, and I'm not afraid to use it. All right, thanks for watching this whole entire part 1 and part 2 of my story. If you have any questions or anything about that, please feel free to ask them. And there will not be any videos on Friday, just because I am actually right now, while you're watching this, on my week-long camping trip, which hopefully I'm not getting eaten by bears, or we have locked things in places without keys, unlike my last trip. So, but I will see you again next Monday.